Just on time. Morning, David. Okay, sorry. Oh, Councillor Osborne, can you hear us now? The room was muted. Oh yeah, a wave. Yep, thank you. Good morning. Okay, we'll start off with a karakia from Phil.
Morena koutou. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, mā kina kina ki uta, mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he ho hu, tihe mauri ora.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, we have apologies from Mayor Adrian, Deputy Mayor Angela and Mayor Len for today. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Maxine. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Okay, agenda confirmation and disclosures of interest. Any disclosures of interest on the agenda today? If not, the minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you, Councillor Angela Strange, for chairing that for me. The last meeting. So, yep. So, can we have a confirmation of the agenda first? Thank you, Angela. Seconder. Thank you, Eugene. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay. Yeah, we've been through that. Yep. Okay, so the previous meeting, minutes of the previous public forum. We'll go to public forum first. So we've got Fiona here. Come forward, Fiona, if you just want to sit down the bottom there and press the right-hand side of the mic. You'll see two buttons there. And just bring the mic close to you for the people online. Okay, morning, Angela. If you'd like to just give who you are and start away with your presentation.
Good morning. My name is Fiona Scott and I represent two local casual horse riding groups, Hamilton Older Riders Social Equitation, or HORSE for short, is a group first of 55 members and was formed in 1985. The other group is Weekday Horse Trekkers with 466 members. Like most of these people, I am a lifelong horse rider. We used to be able to ride out our front gate, along the road or through city streets with no problems at all. We also rode on beaches and even Narrawahia forest. People were more accepting of horses, more courteous. Nowadays, drivers are more impatient and inconsiderate on roads around horses. They do not obey the road code and give way to horses. Riding on road verges can be unsafe, with poor road design and farmers moving fences out to graze the roadsides, forcing riders onto the road itself. Horse riders are experiencing reduced access to beaches. Local councils are creating more public spaces for walking and cycling, but horse riders are excluded. Private landowners are charging expensive fees to ride over their farmland, as a number have now become developed into tourism ventures. Not all people who ride horses want to ride around in circles in an arena like at the horse shows. We want to get out in the wide open spaces and enjoy fresh air, scenery, and exercise. Waikato has Sainsbury Road Reserve at Pirangia that is available for exercising horses. Can I have the next slide, please? Or a couple behind. Thank you. Waikato has Sainsbury Road Reserve at Pirangia that is available for horse riding, but it is small with only approximately 40 hectares. The horse ride around that is short in distance. Next slide, please. Lake D is also small and has poor parking. It's impossible to turn a float round if there's a number of cars parked there. Thompson's Track, next slide, please. Thompson's Track near Te Araha is a paper road that Matamata Piako Council say can be used for horse riding. But in reality, it has been taken over by four-wheel drive vehicles and effectively destroyed, unsafe with massive holes in it. The picture there you can see is a girlfriend of mine trying to scramble out of a hole the size of, wow, it could bury a vehicle. It was ginormous. That was taken not too long ago. Next slide, please. Tauranga has Tech Park, which is 1,650 hectares, massive, with many outdoor activities, including horse riding trails. Next slide, please. Rotorua has the Redwoods riding trails for cycling, I think walking, and horse riding, and that's huge also, 5,600 hectares. Next slide, please. Karakia in the Bay of Plenty, excuse my pronunciation, has Waitikohi Recreation Park. This has cycle trails and some bridle trails. Next slide, please. Hawke's Bay has a number of bridle trails that are maintained by the area council. Next slide, please. The South Island has a number of dock areas that welcome horse riders, like St. James Conservation Area near Hamner Springs. Unfortunately, DOC will not allow horse riders into any areas around that I know of in the Waikato. It would be good to see some interesting places like these developed in the Waikato for horse riders. Options of 5 or 10 kilometre loop tracks with interesting contours, hill climbs, bush and trees. A reserve developed for riding with a large parking area, water for horses to drink and be washed with, covered picnic tables for riders to shelter from sun and rain. A toilet, composting is fine. Paper roads could be turned into bridle trails with parking and facilities for riders. For example, Rotokohu Road near Paeroa actually joins up with a paper road, I believe, Google Maps tells me, over to Wright Road and then Rafferty Road near Te Araha. This would make a great bridle trail with views over the surrounding flat land. Next slide, please.
Fiona, sorry, James has given me a nudge. We only have 5 minutes for the
Yes.
public forum, so I'll let you carry on, but yeah, just aware that the 5 minutes up.
Shed trails could be planned along road corridors or rivers or rail trails. Take, for example, the Kapiti Coast tracks that have 35 kilometres of shared paths for walkers, bikes and horse riders to explore. There is plenty of ground alongside the expressways around the Waikato to do the same here. Next slide, please. What can you do to help us? Please set policy that gives directions to councils to provide for the needs of horse riders in the future planning for the Waikato. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Any questions for Fiona? Well, obviously, Fiona, thank you very much for coming along. It always takes a bit of courage to come in the public forum and present to us. I'm sure the councillors and the mayors will take that back to the local authorities and yeah, see what they do. I know Taupo or Rotorua has quite a few horse tracks, having the National Equestrian Centre right at our back doorstep. So yeah, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Right, committee, we'll go to the confirmation of the RTC minutes for the last meeting. If they're true and correct, can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Angela, and a seconder. Thank you, Philip. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay. What's next? Right, receipt of the minutes. The PP future-proof public transport. Yeah, so would you like to talk to that or anything like that? No? So can I have a mover that they be received? Thanks, Angela, and a seconder. Thanks, Maxine. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay, we've got the regional transport plan. Obviously, a lot has happened from our last committee meeting with the GPS coming out, and then also the submission that we've put in. And thank you, Claire, for giving feedback on the submission. And I think that went in on Friday. And so we'll welcome Nigel.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, committee members. So unfortunately, it's just me today. Most of my team have been taken out with sickness, so I don't have my experts to draw on. I will try and answer any questions that you might have. As Councillor Downer just mentioned, obviously the GPS submission went through last week. Thank you all for your consideration of that. That was circulated ahead of time because the submission date was last Friday. So that's in with the Ministry of Transport now. It's pertinent to this report. Just by way of update, an assessment had been made against the strategic priorities that this committee has been working on for the RLTP and considered to have very good alignment between what has come out in the draft GPS and the work done to date so far in terms of our transport objectives. So you'll see that in table 1 in the report. I will let the report stand as read. But just probably noting where we have got to in our development process to date. And again, probably covered in the report, so I won't go into too many details, but just we have now reached nearly the end of the development of the strategic policy framework. So we're getting to the basically the pointy end of this process, which then allows us to move into the program component. So we have focused very heavily to date on our policy development and our strategic front end. The next aspect is going to be the program that supports it. Many of your organisations will have already submitted part of that program through the continuous programs activities. So your maintenance and operations. For ourselves, that's the public transport program and road safety promotions. So those that have already been submitted early, they require a little bit of additional assessment. So that's now with our colleagues at Waka Kotahi, and that begins a process and a set of conversations as we go through with that. The second aspect to that are the improvement activities. So the specific new activities that we want to see coming through. They're in the process of development right now, and all of our approved organisations will need to submit those by the end of this month. Once we have those in place, we'll be moving into the program development component. And so that's supported by a prioritisation methodology and an assessment. We will utilise the skills of our regional advisory group to help test that before bringing that back to this committee in early November, where we will have our full prioritisation workshop that goes through. We will probably need to circulate some information to you beforehand, just so that you're familiar with that process, and equally myself or the team are all very happy to receive questions through that process. So without further ado, I may leave it there, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions from the committee through the Chair.
Clear.
Yeah. Thanks, Nigel. I just want to congratulate you on the excellent submission, actually. I thought that you'd done a really great job of covering off the concerns, I think, of the Waikato region. And I guess the close alignment between the draft GPS and what we're actually trying to pull together here shows, I think, the good advice that we got from staff. Yeah, so I really want to thank you on that. You did raise a few things actually in your submission, which I thought were really good, apart from the priorities in that, particularly around the funding and your concerns there. And then I also wanted to ask a question about maintaining the system, because we get comments that, you know, the repairs or, you know, the resealing and that, it doesn't seem to be lasting very long. And I don't know whether or not you can guide us on what might be contributing to that. Are we imagining it, or, you know, is it just, it's always been like that? I don't know. Or is it the, do you feel that the maintenance work that's been done is actually done to the standard that's required, or are we going to have to raise the quality of it to make it last longer? My question about the funding, I guess the first thing I raised is that you're concerned about the sustainability of the system. You know, you mentioned, well, obviously it was highlighted in the cabinet paper that, you know, fuel excise tax and also road user charges would probably need to be increased pretty substantially. But in the meantime, there was some short-term borrowing, used to top up. So I'd really like comments about those two things.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor St Pierre, and really appreciate your comments on that and support for it, and very happy to hear that actually the work we've done to date aligned in that space. So addressing some of the specific points that you made there with regards to funding, sustainability was a concern because of the basically the proposal to use debt funding in terms of short-term debt for long-term assets. And so that was the primary concern that came out. Some of the other concerns that existed in there were looking at what the long-term options were for some of the future activity classes. And so one that immediately comes to mind is the interregional public transport, because there was three years worth of funding identified through that GPS and then nothing after that. And so there were some concerns about, does that allow for, I guess, the longevity of activities to come through, and does it promote future activities to come through? The counter to that is that notionally, those activities, once they prove themselves through a trial period, would become part of the baseline program and be incorporated into the public transport activity class. So there's some ambiguity in terms of what exists there, and we're still trying to work through that one. You make a really interesting point about the fuel excise duty and other options, road user charges. Again, we're not sure exactly what that will look like, but certainly that is something that we're going to need to consider into the future. And that kind of relates to your other point in terms of that maintenance of our system. Now, I'll be the first to put my hand up. I'm not an engineer, and I rely very heavily on colleagues who are. And Mr. Spears, please jump in here at any point if you want to make comment on the state highway network. I think what we've observed over many years is there have been different maintenance regimes tested to see what will work on the network in terms of what can we get out of the asset. I think what we've found is probably the limit of a maintenance schedule coming through. Interestingly, I think what we are seeing and certainly hearing through the GPS too is this concept of build back better. And again, we're aligned in that process so that for activities that may be a renewal or a maintenance activity, if there is a known resilience issue or some other limitation existing there, addressing that at the same time. So improving the asset to a better state as it comes back. I am very aware that across the state highway network, there has been a very vigorous program of works, I think, undertaken across the network. And we have seen, significant I guess, potholing and road conditions and deteriorations. Hard to know whether or not it is actually worse or we're just better at reporting on it. And so that I might actually leave that for David to speak to. David, would you like to make comment on that one?
No. Before you do, David, because I travel from Taupo up to here 3 times a week, and there's a new 8K, probably the largest roadworks or longest roadworks that only just finished, and it is full of repairs, and now they've closed the double lane part because obviously the road isn't there. So that's what gets me, it's a new project. It's only just finished, and yet it's like a judder bar all the way through.
So 12 years ago now, I think the decision was made to reduce or cap the funding level for maintenance and operations across the country in favour of some big roading projects. That has come at a cost in local roads and the state highway because the funding stayed the same, but the costs went up almost 60% in some cases. And we've been really clear about that. We've repeatedly said that that's been the challenge that we've had. The result of that is we now have a state highway and a local road network that is experiencing failure at a pavement level, not at a surface seal level. So when you think about a road, there's the basement, then there's a pavement, which is the constructed kind of piece of road, not just hard ground, but the actual construction of the road, and then a little thin seal over the top. Normal maintenance, when you get a crack in that seal or a small pothole, you replace the seal and life goes on, and the seal should last quite a long time. What we're now seeing is failure of the pavement. And the normal practice for that would be a total replacement of the pavement itself, and then a reseal, and then you've got 15 plus maybe 20 years of life in that asset, assuming you keep track of your seal. We're seeing that across the whole network, and it is literally it's a lack of funding and capacity to replace the pavement on a regular basis. The section that you're talking about, Mr. Chair, is a case of the worst summer in I don't know how many years, but a lot of years, and an inability to do pavement rehab, and therefore short-term fixes, which is essentially just redo the seal, and the seal will last sometimes a year, sometimes 6 months. In the case of State Highway 1, where you've got 50 max trucks running over it all the time, it doesn't last very long. And in the case of many potholes, the way our current contracts work, the contractor has a period of time once the pothole's known about to go and repair it. They have to repair it regardless of whether it's got water in it or not. If it's got water in it, it's not going to last very long. If it's dry by some miracle this summer, it will last a wee while. That's our reality. It's also our reality across the local road network, because of course our funding, the funding we get proportionally is the same as the funding the local road networks get, and they've had to make all of your roading managers have had to make the exact same decisions. And that's the short answer as to why you're seeing the failure. It's also why you've seen in the GPS, and in, I can say, cross-party support for a 25+% increase in the baseline for maintenance operations. And that's because we signalled to all of the parties and to the ministry that if we didn't have a prioritisation of maintenance and operations, the current situation would continue. It will take us at least 3 to 5 years to get back to a baseline, possibly longer. And I say possibly longer because the amount of work required would have been manageable had we not had a couple of cyclones that have destroyed huge parts of our transport network, and required diversion of an enormous amount of resource away from what I would call routine maintenance and operations to complete rebuilds of networks. So I wish I could say, hey, we'll have it fixed in a few years and thanks for the money, but the funding is very, very welcome. It's very, very necessary, but it's going to take us and your transport teams quite a while to get back to, I guess, the date people give me is 2012. That's when the network was in quite good condition. If we got back to there, we could be routine maintenance and operations. Things would be ticker.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Yep, Philip.
Just a comment, if I may, through the chair. David, I have just a couple of questions on that, because I think this topic is something that everyone in this room will be really passionate about. That's what they're getting collared by the local communities with questions all the time. I mean, you talked about main increase in the cost structure and no increase in funding. Where have you done the work on where specifically is the main reason for that cost structure? And I sort of allude to maybe traffic management as being a part of that. But the other question I had, has the closure of Marsden Point been a factor in the quality of materials that we're getting for our roads?
So to the first question, no, traffic management's not the root cause, not when you've seen a 60% increase in the cost of steel and a similar increase in the cost of concrete. Traffic management's like a tiny little 1% of that. It's just the thing that's obvious and in your face all the time. Look, traffic management's expensive. It's part of keeping people safe. I'm not going to make a comment about whether it's gone too far or not far enough, because people have all sorts of opinions about that. But no, it's definitely not the root cause for that. It's simply we had the perfect storm, literally. We've had flatline funding. We've had exponential increase in the costs of raw materials to build roads, to build houses, to build. I mean, it's cost you $3,500 per square metre to build a house at the moment. It's just ridiculous. You apply that to trying to build a road or a bridge, and I mean, your transport teams will tell you the same thing. So yeah, flatline funding, massive increase that no one saw coming. Whether they should have or not, don't know, but no one saw coming, which meant that you were maintaining at a level that wasn't sufficient, essentially running the assets down. And at the same time, you know, that would have been okay, but then your costs went through the roof. What was the second question? Oh, Marsden Point. No, Marsden Point's a relatively recent event. So this started, you know, these decisions were made a long time ago, and they were, at the time, they were trade-offs. People wanted, you know, new road investment. We have this much money, let's make a trade-off. And it was a rational trade-off. It's simply the fact that a whole lot of circumstances have conspired to make that a very challenging trade-off. Marsden Point's a very recent feature in that, and at the moment, no, Marsden Point hasn't created an impact. We do have some forward pipeline challenges, no question. New Zealand's a small country. There's only so many people that know how to do this. There's only so many contractors that can store bitumen and that can make the product to the standards that are needed. But apart from one or two hiccups with trials, no, the product that's being put on the roads at the moment is as good as it ever has been. John?
Well, we've got you on the run, David. I suspect you'll be answering the next one. Firstly, I would like to say this committee's done really well. The GPS, when it came out, I mean, what the work we did and what we identified as our priorities, hand in glove stuff. So that was really good. Should set us up for some funding, maybe. This item appears further down the in the agenda, but while we're talking about money and lack of it, David, the Karakia Bridge has been deferred because the tenders came in like way above where they were expected to be. Is that the bridge that we got the $12 million from the government, approved from the government to do that work? Was that in part of that?
So the funding that we've got remains where it is, if that's your concern. We're not too worried about that. Yeah, there is a chunk of money there that was appropriation.
No, that's fine. You've cleared that up. So that leads me to where I was going. That is a particular concern. I know it's State Highway 25, it's Wakakatahi, but it's within our region. And we've acquired some houses for demolition and whatnot on that site. And that, of course, wasn't easy. And there's a bit of blowback in the local community about that. If we now fail to proceed with that work, we've displaced persons from their properties, which is going to cause a bit of strife over on the Coromandel. And also, I just had a talk with my friend beside me on the right here, Kevin. The cheapest time to do anything was yesterday. I know, God, yeah, words of wisdom on my right here. So what concerns me is two things. We're going to have a public bit of blowback because we're going to demolish houses, and two, it's never going to be any cheaper. So with the increased funding from the GPS, is there any chance that we're going to be doing that sooner rather than later?
So we've owned many of those houses for quite a long time, actually, and some of the residents that have been in those houses have been there on extended time relative to the deal that was done when the houses were purchased. We will manage that blowback, and we have been very actively managing that, including proactively rehousing those residents and working with the families to make sure that they are not out on the street, so to speak. In terms of, yeah, well, it's quite floodable, that bridge. I'm not sure you'd last very long. Yeah, look, yesterday was cheaper than today, was cheaper than tomorrow. And unfortunately, the pocketbook's only so big, so we do have to make those choices. The bridge is not being taken off the books; it's simply being deferred so that we can go back to the tenderers and explore with them why the tenders were so much higher than we expected, given the market and given what we've seen elsewhere. We don't know why. There's all sorts of reasons why companies make tenders that are, what they are. It may be we've missed something that they've seen. Maybe they think there's higher risk involved in the project. We don't know yet because we haven't completed that conversation. But once we understand that, so there'd be no point going back out to tender straight away again. We need to learn from why did all of the tenders come out so much higher. Once we understand that, we may adjust our expectations, or we may adjust our price expectations, or we may adjust our scope, depending on what we learn from that process. But it's not off the books; it's simply being deferred so that we can go back and follow what is normal procurement process, which is if you fail the first time, you go back, have a look at whether your expectations are right or not. Perhaps you need one less bedroom or something. And test the market again. Thank you very much.
Angela?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nigel and the team for the submission. It was spot on. Just have talking about safety. When in the process of developing this RLTP, we had the underlying assumption that safety and the road to zero was going to continue in that, because it's vitally important. Just on that, David, I was wondering, the safety cameras, is that program still on track and still ongoing? And will the funding from that contribute to the NLTF?
Yes and yes. So the safety program continues. What's happened is the Road to Zero program has been pulled into the overall maintenance and operations and state highways program. So it hasn't gone. It's simply been considered that having it as its own activity class and its own funding, there was a couple of things. One, it meant there was less flexibility about how we delivered that. And there's, our experience has been that we've had some conflicts between some of the safety works that we've done, safety infrastructure, and the maintenance and operations works, for example. And actually, if we combine the two, we get a whole lot more bang for our buck, and it's much more effective. The upshot of that was, it actually makes sense to bring that program into the overall program. There is still a really strong safety imperative in there, and if you look in the GPS, it's pulled out as a separate priority, but it doesn't get its own activity class. The funding is still there, and the safety camera program is still progressing. In fact, there will be some trials of point-to-point cameras in Auckland, Northland, and Waikato coming up in the near future.
Very good, thank you.
Right, any more questions for Nigel? Okay,
Sorry, through the chair. Thanks, David, for clarifying that up with Angela's comment. It's just mine's a comment is just the perception out there about taking away the road to zero and putting it into a different format is that the safety issue safety has been watered down. So I'm pleased to hear what you just said, but that seems to be the general perception out there. That was sort of ring fenced, and there was a lot of road to zero. Has some sort of good meaning to it. So I'm sure that there's going to be other feedback coming along to that, but good to see that you've got that covered.
Yeah, look, I think that's an item for submissions. That and I know that there's quite a few parties that have made that submission, and remembering that the GPS is Ministry of Transport's work, not ours. We are also making a submission to the GPS. And who knows what status that has or doesn't have in the final version.
Thank you, David. Okay, can we have a mover and a seconder for the Regional Land Transport Plan to be received? Thank you, Claire. And second, Kevin. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay, on to the next agenda, which is for a decision. We've got Community Transport Fund allocation, and we've got Samantha. Morning, Amantha.
That's right. Good morning. Good morning, Amantha Bowen, Community Transport Lead. And today's item is about how the distribution, the first distribution of the Community Transport Fund has gone so far and what our recommendations are for this year's, this financial year's distribution. So we took applications and made decisions and distributed funding in June. So we just eked it into last financial year. We had a few learnings, even though that's only been a couple of months ago, that we would like to bring into this next year's distribution. So that includes taking applications a bit earlier in the year. So we'll do that, or we would suggest doing that between October and December annually. So we'd be aiming for November this year. And that the indicative cap that we had in our policy, which was there to give applicants an understanding of likely how much they might receive, was set at 10K, but we would recommend bringing that up to 20K. There's a table in the report that shows what everybody applied for, and we actually were able to fully fund what everyone applied for this first year, and there were very few that went above 20K. So we think that that is an adequate indicative cap for them. There was some confusion in this first year as well with the 10K. Initially, people didn't apply for beyond that because they thought that they weren't allowed to. And when invited to apply for more, every single one of them wanted or felt that they needed a bit more. We also have staff investigating the potential to grow the fund through Waka Kotahi's contribution. So once we've received a bit more information from that, then we'll happily report back. And it's otherwise a pretty short report. So any questions, I'm very happy to take.
Thank you, Amantha. Yeah, so when I read the report, it's a bit of a no-brainer because I think out of the 13 applicants, there was only 3 under 10,000. And then also how you've mentioned that you've brought the application forward because that came back as a feedback. Is that was the wrong timing or?
Yeah, I mean, we knew in the first year that it wasn't great timing, but it was just a matter of when we were able to bring the policy to the committee for endorsement and how it fell out from that first year. So now that we've got a policy in place and we've got a process in place, we can definitely do that earlier. And the sector's financial year actually runs from April to March. So this doing applications in that window at the end of the calendar year would really benefit them.
Angela?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, really good report and really good outcome. Pleasing to see that there's a good regional spread and range of providers out there. Just in point 8, you note that there are not 29 known transport providers, but only 14 applied. So that's 50%-ish.
Yes.
And given that the fund was, fully allocated, moving forward, what sort of levels do you expect to see to engage with those 29 providers?
Yeah.
And get them all where they need to be providing sustainable community transport, because that's really important in a region like ours. That's my first question.
Okay. That is a really great question, Angela. And I did toy with putting a bit into the report around recommendations and forecasting, but it's quite difficult to say at this stage. I think we were pleasantly surprised by how well subscribed it was because it was a brand new fund. There was some learning and growing pains for people. It was coming at a weird point in our financial year and theirs. So having that 50 roughly % subscribed to it was a really great outcome. It wasn't fully distributed, so we did have about $9,000 that didn't get spent and has been rolled into the next financial year. So that's a great outcome for the community. They're still going to get that funding. And I definitely think we're going to have a higher demand in this upcoming year. Most of these, and this is indicated in the report, most of these groups have experienced some social, economic, and environmental stressors in the past couple of years, which has increased demands on them. And we didn't have emergency funding or anything like that we could contribute to them. Some groups did, but I do think that they'll have increased year upon year financial demands, and I would probably expect that an increase to our fund would help there, but I couldn't speculate as to how much that would be, how much we would need at the moment. So as I mentioned, staff are investigating, looking to Waka Kotahi to contribute, and I think that could make a huge difference. But I can't really say at the moment how much greater the demand is going to be, especially in this second year when people kind of know how the process looks and we're coming to them earlier in their timeline.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pleasing to hear that Waka Kotahi might match the funding or contribute something. Can't wait to see what that might be. I would be quite interested to see just generally what the funding is being spent on, just to see if there are other avenues that we might partner with other people to come on board. Yeah, the other question has slipped my mind, but it might come back. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Did you want to say something, Oliver, before I go to Kevin? Yeah, Kevin?
So, excuse me, thanks for the report, and I agree with Angela, it's well written and insightful. And my concern, which you've raised, and don't want to try and project into the future, but we actually need to do that. First year, 200,000, we're almost completely subscribed. Now that it's known, and given the pressures the groups are applying for and those that didn't are going to face are only going to get more significant going forward, I just wonder what the mechanism would be to increase that funding. I would be very surprised if this isn't significantly oversubscribed going forward. So I'm almost thinking out loud here, but my suggestion would be to the committee, we do need to look at increasing that, and significantly.
I think, Kevin, we are going to be making an application to one of the pots through Waka Kotahi or the government for this, because I think it is. I spoke to the mayor over in Tikawiti, Mayor John, and he praises, the two services, one private that I think might have got funding from this, and then also the bus that's in between there for for the older people and the territory, the university students. So yeah, I believe as Angela said, 14 to 29, and that speaks for itself. That we've still got another 15 that could apply or probably will apply.
Yeah, look, I accept that, but my concern is around the timeline as well, because this is pretty tight timing. This is already mid-September, and we're looking at a December round, so there's not much of the runway left to get this sorted.
It's normal in this game, though, isn't it? Any other questions? Yeah, sorry, David.
Oh, you go first.
Angela.
I've always got my line.
So I'm just curious what somebody did with $1,000, because it doesn't buy you much. But putting that aside, how many of these indicated that they'd be ongoing costs as opposed to one-offs? Because that'll give you a sense of, next year you're going to have the same bunch all asking for the same $190,000 and no new ability. And also, I'll be honest, this is not that helpful without being able to see what they actually spent the money on and whether you're getting value from an outcome point of view. I suspect that the requirement to use discretion and ask them to further justify an increase to $20,000 might actually improve the quality of your applications, rather than just saying, hey, here's 20 grand, we've got 400 grand to spend, you can each have $20,000 each. But I don't, without being able to see the detail of what they've been using that money for, I actually think a bit more discretion in making people justify that increase is not a bad thing.
Okay, we'll go to Angela and then Councillor Osborne online and then Claire. Oh, Councillor Osborne, would you like to go first? Angela asked.
Thank you, Angela. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Just speaking on the $1,000 that you just talked about there, that was a classic case of the provider had already received all their funding from other sources by the time that this was made available. So that's why that was only $1,000. And that organisation, their main barrier is trying to find voluntary drivers. And I just had another comment as well. We're going to talk later in the meeting about school transport. At the moment, we have a school bus run, which is MOE has made the decision at the moment to cancel it. And that will involve 6 families who are going to have to drive themselves. Is this something the Community Transport Fund could be used for? Is that an option, or is it just not an option?
So first of all, thank you for clarifying the $1,000. You're quite correct, and I did want to interject with that as well. This was a timing issue for many of these groups because their financial year runs in a different span than our financial year, and so we were coming to them after they'd kind of closed their financial year, and it was just a weird. For the first year, it was just a weird timing situation. To answer your question, Councillor, the fund's policy, which I'm very happy to share again, essentially outlines that community transport is meeting community needs where there aren't other reliable or modes to be relied upon. So it could be a little bit blurry if it was supposed to be, if it's found that it's supposed to be something that's covered by Ministry of Education. We are looking, staff are investigating building better relationships with Ministry of Education to partner with them and understand how we can bridge those gaps that are starting to arise. But it is possible that they would be able to apply. It would just, there's the policy's kind of broad, but there are some requirements to it. I also wanted to add, if it's all right, that the funding that these groups applied for, they did provide their budget as part of their application. So we have an understanding of things like petrol costs, insurance, maintenance of the vehicle, and all of those things that they're putting their funding towards, as well as who some of their where their income comes from. So unfortunately, most of them, because they are technically offering free transport for Koha, they don't get fully funded by the passenger, which is what we're essentially subsidizing the cost alongside other grants and funds that they're applying for. It's not a given year to year that they're going to get that funding. Neither is it a given that we'll approve their funding. We certainly haven't said that 20K or 10K cap is definitely coming to them. It's more an indicative max that they could potentially get from us. But while I do anticipate year to year, these same groups will probably want to come back to us and may even need more than what they've originally asked for. It's not going to be exactly the same year to year. They might have a year where an estate donates a good chunk of money to them and they're actually sorted for that year. So these funds aren't typically going to one specific thing. It's not to the tires that they're replacing that year or something like that. It's all of those things brought together. I hope that answers all the questions.
Angela, did you want to line or Claire? Claire?
Yeah, and thanks. Really picking up on what Angela said earlier about understanding what the providers are, I suppose the services that they're meeting, or needs that they're meeting. So it's in the accountability that we get. Like, it seemed to me that a lot of those providers are doing health services.
Yes.
Yes. And it would be good to know if there are others that are doing more general services. Yeah. And then whether or not that in itself means that there might be partnerships possible. Yeah, because I think the point that Angela made was really good, that if we have a better understanding of, how these people are delivering services and for what needs, we might be able to facilitate some kind of partnerships or grow the benefit. Yeah. Do you know whether or not Te Whatu Ora would fund community health shuttles?
I do. So Te Whatu Ora actually has a historical relationship of funding community transport in the Waikato region, or I should say Waikato District Health Board has a historic relationship of funding many of these groups. The formulas that they used are a bit unclear. It seems to just be historic agreements that they roll over year after year. And I don't remember if we've where or whether it's included in this report specifically, but there is actually a rising concern that as they nationalize into the Te Whatu Ora structure, there may not be an ongoing relationship of funding community transport because they'll be doing a uniform, I would imagine, a uniform behavior across the nation. And it will probably turn into all or nothing. Either they fund community transport across the nation or they don't. And most of these providers are providing health transport. I would nearly all of them.
Okay.
There's a very small amount who are able to provide errands or, not only getting you to the grocery store, but also can you get to a cafe to meet up with your friends? And that kind of social isolation and well-being is something that we're highly motivated to help support these groups to be able to expand towards. So staff are looking into ways to bridge those relationships with our public transport offerings and other transport solutions in order to free up potentially community transport groups to be able to offer a wider range of transport services. But I think it's a bit of a bigger journey, and we do absolutely have on our radar the notion that there are these larger funding partners like Te Whatu Ora who may or may not be able to support what we're doing, or in fact, they may pull out from something they've been previously doing, and that will cause a bit of a risk to the sector as well.
I really appreciate those comments. Yeah, and also to getting back to the accountability or the reporting, to understand the number of people that they're helping or the overall benefits. I presume you'll be having some measures there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Apologies that we don't have accountability reporting to give to you now, as we've just done the distribution in June. But we do anticipate probably getting a really rigorous report back in around December. And that means that early 2024, at the next committee meeting, early 2024, we'd be able to give a much broader understanding of who they're targeting within their communities and how specifically our funding has helped contribute to that. So I'm really excited to see that myself.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Maxine?
Yeah, thanks very much, Claire. That's exactly the question that I wanted to have answered. I think David raises a really clear point about that accountability and exactly who and how and why is critical information for this committee, especially if we're looking at being able to pass number 3 on your staff recommendations, the increase from 10 to 20,000. What relationship does that have with the funding that is allocated? Would that mean that there is an increase in your mind to what happens to the overall fund, or is it simply that we'll be just reducing the number of people that might be able to apply?
Truthfully, I think it's just a language or a concept tweak that is going to help enable community transport providers who apply to get their heads around what is possible for them. So one of the main takeaways, one of the main learnings that we had from this first round is that I mentioned we had a cap of 10K. We had few enough applicants that we definitely had some funding left over. We had I want to say maybe 9 applicants who applied for exactly 10K initially. And then we actually went back to them and said, you could have more if you needed more. There is some left. And if you have a need and you can justify that need through your application, then there's some capacity for us to support further. And the feedback was that the 10K just confused them. That cap confused them. We do think it's a good idea to have an indicative cap so that they don't think this could be an $50,000 fund for one group, because some groups do hear $200,000 and kind of think, oh, a lot of that could be for me. Not in a greedy way, but in the realm of what they could accomplish with a significant amount of funding could change things for their community. But we also obviously want to target as much of the region as we can. I wanted to add as well, we know of 29 providers currently across the region, but funds like this and the community transport program that we've started here at Regional Council are very likely to help support new groups coming into existence. So 29 today, but over the next couple of months, I've already been in conversation with some communities who are like, how do we get a vehicle? And we've got volunteers who want to start doing this. So how do we do that? And that's part of my role here as well, is to help them get started. So absolutely, I think the fund is going to need to grow. I don't think we were prepared after only a couple of months from the first distribution to say how much more we would recommend it growing. So hopefully we will at the next report be able to back that up based on the accountability report and having done 2 allocations. And we are, as you have mentioned, targeting Te Whātua, Wakakotahi, and others to see if they can, if we can pool our efforts and support the sector, because it is highly vulnerable and they have had increased demands.
And through the chair, I wonder whether we might be able to put a minute note in with those last comments. Wonderful.
Oh, that was my one.
That's from Angela, but certainly I think it's relevant points made to the size of the fund and the need for that analysis of other funders that might be in the area. Thank you. Thanks for your answers.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm reflecting on Councillor Kevin's comments about the increased need. We know we've got a growing population, we've got inflation, the need is just going to get bigger and bigger. So hence I've put up C up there. I think at the moment it's $1 per property per year. So this would increase to $1.50 per property per year as a targeted rate that is, ring fenced for this purpose. So yeah, leave it there.
Okay, any comments for that additional number 2, the C around the table? Councillor Osborne online?
I would be keen to see that number actually increase even further for reasons of the rural isolation that we have in so much of the district.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. It's obviously something that me and Angela have to advocate for in the long term, but we need support from everyone in this room. So yeah, so everyone's happy with that, then we'll go along with the resolutions with the added Part C. See nodding heads, is that all one confirm? Or we'll go through the resolution anyway and see it. So we've got the resolution there that 2 parts, and the second part's in 3 parts. So we'll go first with that the report, the Community Transport Fund allocation for 22-23 be received, and then part 2, based on the feedback from the transport sector and fund applicants, that the following adjustments be made to the Community Transport Grant Fund policy, and they are A, B and C, which is that the Community Transport Fund allocation for providers financial year 23-24 starts in November 23, with the applicants being advised of success in December, and then B, that the Community Transport Fund allocation indicative cap be raised from 10K to 20K, and then the new one, Part C, that the Regional Transport Committee recommend to the Waikato Regional Council that the Community Transport Fund is increased from 200 to 300K through the long-term plan process. I have a mover and a seconder for that. Everyone happy with that resolution? Okay, we've got a mover by Maxine and second by Claire. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you, Amantha.
Thank you.
Okay, the next, we'll have the next item and then we'll have a break. We've got the Regional Public Transport Planning, service proposals and significant changes, etc. report, and we've got presenting this is Catherine. Morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. And just providing an update on the Regional Public Transport Planning. Just some two key highlights, I guess, is that the new service concepts for the Eastern Districts is progressing well. This is more of a progress update than it is a recommendation update at this RTC meeting, which I can provide some more progress details on a bit later. The second being that the Ministry of Education completed their funding review for the Franklin Tour Car services, and they have confirmed that they are going to reduce their their funding to the Franklin Transport Group, which I can go into a little bit of detail, but I am also aware that they're here this afternoon, so questions probably may be more relevant to be directed to them. So in terms of the Eastern District services, just an update. As you know, this has been split at this point into two parts. The first being the new service concepts for the Eastern Districts, TCDC and Hauraki. We have been meeting with two parts at the TCDC, one being the social recovery unit. They are doing a lot of work on recovery and resilience in the district following the recent weather events, and have expressed a keen interest to see where our work is at and how it could align. And we have also met with the TCDC elected members just to present to them our recommended route options, which we put through a multi-criteria analysis, and just to gauge feedback and their opinions from that. So they were very fruitful. We've received a lot of feedback, which we are busy working through and tweaking concepts in line with that. We are also planning to meet with Hauraki District within the next month to get their feedback as some options for within their district. So that'll be more feedback and tweaking following that. Changes to the Eastern Connector, same situation really. We have met with MPDC elected officials last week and have again received feedback, which we are working through to possibly meet with them again. So yep, progressing great. Waikato District Council, the trials, as you know, we are working through in terms of the Raglan new local service trial and a new service in Tamaheri and Matangi. And yes, that is my main points of highlights. I can take questions if need be.
Okay, any questions for Catherine? Yeah, Claire.
Yeah, thanks very much. I've got a question about the Tikawiti service and then the Tamaheri and Matangi one. So firstly, have any targets been set for patronage on the Tikawiti one? Because the terminology you've got there is that the use is promising, and I think in another part of our agenda it states the actual number of users. I was really concerned that there wasn't much promotion about the launch of the service. I can't believe that you'd want people to use it and not tell them that it's available. And with people needing to plan their tertiary year, you know, there needs to be good communication on what's available so people can commit to actually attending uni knowing that there's a service available. So is there going to be ongoing promotion of it, and have you got a target for the number of users that you think would be a demonstration of success on that one?
Thank you. Through the chair. I'm not sure if there were specific targets set. This could be a question I may pass on to Trudy as the operations manager. I know that there was a launch of the service in Te Kuri at the time when it came on board, and I'm sure that as time progresses that the communications team and operations team are kept on top and needing to do any more communications, then they will do that. In terms of, you know, whether patronage, you know, is promising or successful at this point, I think, you know, the usage of that word at this point is just that it only launched in February. We do anticipate seasonal fluctuations, particularly with students and school holidays. And so, you know, at this point, it's promising, it's looking good, but you really need the seasonal trends, at least a year, 18 months, to really know what the permanent or more realistic, I guess, expectations are.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it's not just Tikawiti that's the community that's being served, you know, it goes through Otahonga and Kihi, Te Omutu, Auhelpo, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm hoping that the promotion of it would be spread in those communities too. And yes, it usually, I mean, when I went to uni, yeah, it was just usually, you know, from March till November, but there's a lot of summer schools now and things like that. So, you know, you're not necessarily going to only be having a seasonal pattern, you know. In fact, it'd be great if people that were living in those communities knew that they could, you know, take that course that's going to get them finished sooner and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Oliver?
I'm just wondering what work has been done to make sure that the new bus stops are accessible to disabled people, particularly in those areas like Whangamata, for example, where there's a really high proportion of people who are over 65. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for your question. Most infrastructure bus stop, questions, really we work alongside the territorial authority on that. They do run past their bus stop designs with us. And we do like to ensure and certainly give them feedback that it should be accessible. We are also working alongside Hamilton City Council at the moment to establish a public transport design guidelines, which will spell out, requirements, for PT infrastructure. So we can certainly rely on that in future to say, that's the expectation for all transport stops.
A lot of that work's already been done with the pedestrian network design guide.
Yeah, and there's a lot of supporting infrastructure. I think the intention of it is just to collate all the information. We rely a lot on some Auckland transport standards as well as Waka Kotahi standards, and so it's just really formalising a localised one for ourselves, I guess. But any infrastructure plans that come through us, we certainly run it past our relevant teams to ensure that those standards are there.
Thanks, Oliver. Trudy, did you want to comment on anything? I see you come up. It was through the last question, was it?
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment through to Councillor St Pierre in terms of Tikawiti and Tokoroa. In terms of the team on the ground, we are working closely with those communities where the service runs through, in particular the eyesights and also any other, council locations. We are doing that to ensure that we provide the access for people to be able to purchase the B cards, to be able to travel, and also provide, timetable information, journey planning, all that type of thing. And just to add, we are regularly in touch to receive feedback from the coalface to understand what, the demand is shaping up to be in those smaller communities with a regularity in terms of visiting, those smaller communities. Okay.
Thank you, Claire. Angela?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Catherine, for your report. Just a theme that emerged to me through reading this is that partnership piece. Each one of these is a partnership with different providers through the region. And just really wanted to highlight that total mobility as well, going to a regional implementation of that. That's a game changer for so many people. And thank you, Waka Kotahi, for the extra 25% on top of what we had proposed as well. I know, especially within the future-proof area, there is so much cross-boundary travel that happens, and it's just going to really simplify things for those users as well as the wider region as well. So yeah, thank you for that. Just one other thing while I remember, the Tikawiti piece and that partnership piece. Great to see University of Waikato and also Ministry of Ed contributing as well. So yeah, it's really important that we all do work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Maxine?
Thank you. Excellent points, Angela. Just a bit of an update on the Tamahere Matangi service, the trial there. Have you really had any further feedback from Ministry of Education and I guess mitigants against them withdrawing their funding? It would be useful to know.
Yes, thank you for that question. I have been working quite closely with the Ministry of Education and Reid, who's just arrived from the ministry. So there are ways that the proposed trial timetable and service can operate that would mean that the ministry wouldn't need to withdraw their service, which looks like that's probably where we may be heading, which doesn't, I mean, due to the budget constraints, sorry, I don't know why that keeps happening, but due to the budget constraints, the service isn't likely to be.
Sorry, someone's mic might be on. It's just arrived.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Where was that? Okay. It's not likely to be a very high frequent service anyway, just the nature of the trial and the constraints that we are under. So one of the requirements for the Ministry of Education that they take into consideration is the timetables and how they align with the school times, opening and closing. We have developed some proposed timetables at this point that coincide, that match each of our preferred route options at this point. Both of those timetable options do not meet that requirement of meeting either the school AM or PM, opening or closing time. And my understanding, with conversations with Ministry of Education, is that because there isn't that alignment, then they may not withdraw their service. So that's the direction that we're heading in. I'm hopeful that it won't. And, the trial is going to only launch with a 12-seater shuttle. So we've been quite clear that we're not able to carry school children. And so meeting with the community boards and sharing the feedback from the ministry, the feedback that I've received from the community is very much in support of let's not align the timetable to the schools and let's just make it fit so that the ministry maintains their service, with the bigger picture being in the long term, we wouldn't want to, exclude children, but we need to be in a position where we have services and big enough vehicles to, compensate and take it on. So, yeah, hopeful at this point that won't happen.
Thanks, Maxine. Eugene.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Catherine, for all the work. I know you've been doing a lot of work with the Tamahere and Matangi communities around that, and then also Tauwhare Pā. Look, it's really concerning because it's happening in the north of our district too, with MOE, sort of pulling the pin or reducing funding on some of their bus services for the kids, and I'm sure that they've had a lot of increases with other bits and pieces and salaries, etc., that they've just announced. And on my concern is that money is ring fenced, so they're looking at bus services as an option to keep their funding within that capped area, and they're targeting the bus services, which is disappointing because the trials that Waikato District are doing are trials. They have got 12 months local funding share, and there's nothing guaranteed after that. But I just noticed MOE seem to be jumping in and reduce those services under a trial, which is very disappointing actually. But I think there's concerns for all of our PT services with MOE seem to be going down that track at the moment. So
thanks, Eugene. Okay, any more questions for Catherine and Trudy? If not, then we've got a resolution here that the report regional public transport planning update be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Eugene, and a second. Thank you, James. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay, we'll have a break and welcome James into the committee for your report later on. So we'll have a 10-minute break now and then we'll go on to item 11 after that. Okay. Thank you.